Welcome to Making Sales Simple, podcast by Helen Tebay, Sales Lady. So I'm so excited to have Stephen Lerman from Chameleon BDS Limited here. Hello, Stephen.
Hello and good afternoon, Helen.
Hi. So Stephen and I have been networking for, was it 3 years maybe? 3 years?
Yeah, it's just about 3 years, yeah.
Yeah. And so I found out that Stephen is a great cold caller. He's got such an amazing skill set with this and has a company that's set up around appointment setting and even looking at teaching that out as a skill. You know, there's all this scope with you, and cold calling is just your jam. So I thought, oh my goodness, we've got to get him on the show, on the podcast, because I think this is something that people get really hung up on, and I thought you could myth bust a little bit and just get people started. So that's the
Absolutely.
aim of today if you're listening.
Yes, and thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So where did you get the lust? I don't know why that word came up for me. That lust, that desire to start cold calling. Where did it all start for you?
So it started on the streets of Detroit back in the middle 90s. I moved to America after doing 2 years of Camp America, and I got offered a job. I decided to pack up and move overseas. So I started knocking on doors on the streets of Detroit. So there was no smartphones, there was no Google Maps, there was no mobiles or anything like that. I basically just knocked on every single door and drove up every single road, trying to drum up business for the company I was working for. And I thought if I could do that, then I could do absolutely anything. And roll forward 20 odd years, I decided to set up my own business, cold calling. I didn't really like it when I was cold calling for other people, but I absolutely love it doing it for myself and for my clients. You have so many amazing conversations. No 2 days are the same. Um,
Yeah.
and it's just, I build relationships over the telephone. I'm not a call center. I don't do high volume calling at all. It's all about creating those relationships.
Yeah, love that. What an amazing experience to cut your teeth with sales. You're the second person I've had on this podcast who has done sales in America and learned the craft of selling, that like door knocking, old school like canvassing, prospecting. Oh my goodness, so many questions that are coming up. What was your favourite bit?
The favorite bit of cold calling is, I would say, it's not knowing how the conversation's going to what direction it's going to go in each time. It's every conversation is completely different, and what I like is, um, it's a bit different because what I do now I do on the telephone, but when I was doing it door to door, it's just being able to read people and and take that myth away of it's not always about selling. It's about trying to understand people's businesses. So I just really do enjoy talking to people. I'm a schmoozer. You know, I love to talk to people.
Yeah. You've got a voice that's like liquid gold as well. Like I could hear your voice all the time. I don't care, get bored of it. You've got a really nice. Someone will correct me with this, I'm sure, but like the tone and the melody of it and everything. I think you just create really good like confidence and like calm. Yeah.
Oh,
Have you ever
thank you.
thought of going into that?
Well, funnily enough, so I read a book called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I started reading that a couple of years ago, and I've listened to it a couple of times. And part of that, Chris talks about speaking in the late night DJ voice. So it's
yeah. There it is.
slow, it's dark, and funnily enough, when I was
Whatever
talking
you're
to a
selling,
yeah,
I'll buy.
absolutely. And the funny thing is, I was talking to a potential client, and they said to me, um, "Have you ever done any voiceover work?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Would you mind recording our out of hours voicemail for us?" So, and that's where it all started, really. I haven't actually got to the point where I've recorded any voiceovers, but it's something I'm seriously considering because you're not the first person to have said it. A few people have said
Yeah.
that they like the
If
sound
I
of my
ever
voice.
need like a voicemail message splitter system or whatever on the phone, coming to you.
Thank you
But
for
there's
that.
something to be said for that, because you obviously are able to create the really nice environment needed to have those initial conversations. And what you said before is so interesting, because this is what about 90% of people say to me they hate is the unknown. It's their worst nightmare, like knocking on a door and not knowing who's gonna answer it and how they're gonna be and what they're gonna say. And the same on a telephone. I've got people in my network that are like, "Oh, I ignore, unknown numbers because I don't know who it is." I'm like, "It might be a potential client. Answer it." And they're like, "Yeah, but it might be a weirdo." I'm like, "Well, you either way, you'll find out like if you answer it." Um, but that's something that you said that you absolutely thrive on, enjoy. That's what you love about it.
Yeah, I don't fear cold calling at all. I mean, what's the worst thing that somebody could say? It's no, isn't it? And you don't,
Yeah,
and I just never
yeah.
take it personally. And when I pick up the phone, what I tell people is I smile when I dial, because when you talk to people and you smile, you can absolutely hear it in somebody's voice. Um,
Yeah.
but there's people fear cold calling for many reasons. It's like common anxieties and uncertainties, all associated with the process. What I did is I came up with a good acronym for fear regarding cold
Oh, let's
calling.
hear it.
So so it's F, face it head on. Okay. E, embrace rejection as part of the process. A, act despite your apprehensions. And R, reframe negative thoughts and perceptions. So if we go back to rejection, so rejection is one of the primary fears associated with cold calling. So that the prospect of being turned down fills a lot of people with dread. It's an
Mm,
intimidating, and it can be really discouraging for many individuals. But like I said, what is the worst thing that somebody can say? It's just no. It might not be
yeah,
the right
and I
time for
think,
them. They might be busy.
yeah, yeah, we don't know what they're dealing with, absolutely. And I think this goes back to our primitive brain that, 20 million years older, like time past. Rejection was a really like life-threatening thing. Like if you got rejected from the tribe or from your group, you wouldn't survive very long on your own. In those days. And so rejection sometimes, like our brain can't quite differentiate between that and it's just someone that said no to us. It takes us back to that, but we could die here. And actually, no, the word that's probably not going to happen. They might shout, they might swear, they might react,
Yeah,
but generally speaking, having been on the phone myself for a number of years, um, the times that you do get shouting, swearing, I can probably count on both hands versus the amount of like hundreds of thousands of calls that we've all made. It's a very small percentage when that happens, and it's often not really about you either.
no, of course
So,
it's not.
yeah, so I
You
think
just
that rejection just like just needs calming down a little bit, because it's not as pertinent as what our brain would have us thinking that it is.
Absolutely. I mean, you talk about you've had some nasty phone calls. I think I can count on one hand the amount of times I've
Mm,
had somebody rude talk to me. I've actually only had my life threatened once, funnily enough, and that was last year. Quite bizarre, really. But you just take it on the chin. You don't know what's going through people's minds when you talk to them on the telephone. Um, they could have had a bereavement, they could be ill, sick child, going through divorce, anything. So I
yeah,
just don't take it personally. I smile, I say thank you, the time's not right, I'll give you a call another time. And generally people are quite receptive to that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you
And
just
I
can't
actually
take it
find
personally.
No, and I do find when people do ring or message or they do something cold or they go and physically stand like door knock, um, the responses that they think they're going to get versus the responses they actually get, our brain will have you thinking 100% fact that those worst case scenarios are going to happen, and 95, 97% of the time they don't. And the small like percentage where it does happen, we can give our brain the evidence that yeah, that's fine, that's gonna happen, but we can still move forward, we can still keep going, and it's okay. Like, so even if it does happen, it doesn't mean it's a reason to stop doing it, because you've got a message, you've got something that you're selling, you've got something important that you think these prospective clients might be interested in. So, which one are you going to care about more? Helping people, or that feeling of potential uncomfortableness just for like maybe a few seconds? So, yeah, it's not always, our brain often thinks 100% it's going to be like this and it's going to feel like that and it's going to go like that and they're going to say this. And when we do that mental rehearsal, it's often nowhere near that. People are actually a lot more engaging, friendly, and helpful than what we think that they are going to be.
Absolutely. I mean, the other things that people fear is, they feel that they're going to be intruding in somebody's day, or
Mm,
they're unprepared, or they might have their communication skills might not be up to scratch, and they might be ineffective. So you've just got to be prepared, and you might have something that they may need. So they don't know that until you actually have that conversation. So you're not really intruding. You've got to get away from that mindset, which I think that's a big one.
yeah,
So never apologize for picking up the phone and talking to somebody because you just don't know. They may need your services. Everybody wants to buy, they just don't want to be sold to. So it's a way of talking to people, communicating in a way that doesn't come across as a sleazy sell.
yeah, that's it, absolutely. So we've got some of the common misconceptions there about cold calling, that it's going to be hard, difficult, people are going to like be rude, I'm not going to get anywhere, no one takes calls nowadays, like those kind of misconceptions. What can we think instead? You mentioned about reframing the negative. Like, how do we start doing that? What would we need to start thinking about instead?
So it's about so you said there's popular misconceptions, and I think I just mentioned a few of them. Um, so it's not always about making sales, okay? It's
Mm,
about building a relationship. So you've got to go with that mindset that you're potentially building a relationship. You're gathering market intelligence and identifying potential opportunities for future collaboration or follow-up. So people always try to sell on that first call, and you shouldn't do that at all. It's very rare
yeah,
that you're actually going to make a sale on that first phone call. What it is you're establishing a need,
yeah.
identifying opportunities, and then with an opportunity to then call them back at a later date. And sometimes it takes 6, 7 attempts before you finally get through to somebody.
Yeah. And I think in this day and age, it feels like a longer route to success, or um, they, we can just swipe left or right, we can click a few buttons, we can do so much and we get that instant gratification. But actually, in my experience, when we pick up the phone and speak to people, yes, you might have to do it a couple of times, find the right person, get how we reach them. And then when you actually get them, um, you can get so much more out of the interaction than if you were emailing or direct messaging. So I do find that some of the stuff we do, like a combination is good, email, direct message, phone. But when you get them, I much prefer to speak to someone because you just get the raw information, you get more honest stuff, you can ask more questions, it flows better, you can hear things in their tone, you just get so much more intel from a conversation than a DM or an email. But it seems to be easier to email or DM because then you don't have to deal with this like raw emotion that's happening as you're making these calls. But it's always the more efficient route, I find, is to pick up the phone and speak to people.
Yeah, absolutely. You're having a personalized conversation with somebody when you talk to them on telephone. So you're building that relationship and trust. You don't get that same sense from an email or direct marketing.
Mm,
Cold calling provides an opportunity to showcase not only the product or service, but also the people behind the brand. So when you're talking to someone on the telephone, they get to know you. You're laying that foundation for a long-term relationship. You don't quite get that from an email or a text or a post, do you?
yeah, absolutely.
And also,
So,
just one thing, you're
no,
also getting immediate feedback. You talk to someone on the telephone and you actually speak to them, you're going to get feedback right away. So this allows a
yeah,
business to adapt their pitch on the spot. Addressing concerns and objections in real time, and that adaptability is really crucial in building rapport and credibility.
yeah, absolutely. I really like that last point. It's so true, and it's the evaluation part of it. If you can get some like raw intel from that conversation, I didn't explain it very well, they didn't get it. Great, that gives you, instead of beating yourself up about it, I'm shit at cold calling. No, it's a skill. You've just got right. Okay, it tells you exactly where to go and practice. And ask colleagues, ask people who have done it before. If you're in a call center, how do other people do it? If you're going networking, how do other people like introduce themselves? Doesn't matter if they don't use the phone to do it, but how do they do it? So it gives you like a really good like laser focus. That's the bit that I need to go and work on, because that's the bit where I lost them, or that's the bit that was unclear. So it's never wasted effort, it's never a wasted opportunity, is it? You can always glean something from it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah, it should never be a wasted phone call. You know, you
No.
always want to leave that phone call with some intelligence that will help you, if not with that phone call, calling them back down the line, but with future calls that you make for different clients.
Yeah, maybe they've given you an objection you've never heard before, and you're like, right, okay, I stumbled because yeah, I didn't have an answer for it. Let me go and work out what I'd say if I hear that again. Whereas I'd say 95% of people go away, like lick their wounds and go, that really hurt. Oh God, this is not working. It's really shit. No, nobody wants my product. Nobody wants it. And actually, we just haven't done the work and the effort needed to explain it. So actually, what you're getting is really good, like real time feedback, and it pinpoints exactly where to go and work. So it's really efficient. I know sometimes it hurts, but it should, like you said, don't take it personally. Try and remove that emotion from it, and let's see what needs to be worked on. So with that in mind,
Yes.
what what would a structure of a cold call look like? We talk about people try and sell and they try and put too much into it. How would you start it off?
Okay, so it's a bit of a step-by-step guide, if you will. You've got to
Yeah,
understand your audience. Okay, so take the time to research and understand your target audience, identify the industries, demographics, and the pain points that your product or service can address. This will help you tailor your pitch and approach to resonate with your prospects. So, understand your audience is where to start. Okay, and then what you want to do is you want to create your value proposition. So develop a clear and compelling value proposition that highlights the benefits of your product or service. What problem does it solve? How does it add value to the prospect's business or life? The value proposition should be concise, memorable, and relevant to your target audience. Okay. Um,
yeah,
One of the things that I don't like doing is I don't like using a script because it sounds very robotic. In the very beginning, you might need a script so you become more familiar with what you're trying to say. So instead of having a script, have an outline or key points that will help you guide the
yeah.
conversation, ensure that you cover all the necessary points. So you might want to include an engaging opening statement, an overview of your value proposition, and some potential responses to common objections. You should always have objections um, to hand so you know how to reply. Um,
Yeah. And you can
you
keep
know,
adding to that bank, because people might say it a different way, or say something, mean the same objection, but they've said it differently, and you're like, oh, I don't know what to say to that or what to ask.
yeah,
Really good. And I really like that. It's so much easier to have just prompts or framework
yes,
rather than say these exact words. Because let's face it, you're dealing with human beings with brains that have too many variables to have like a playbook, or like if they say this, you say that. If they say
yep,
this, you do that. Great to have a little bit of a framework and think about, okay, if someone was to say that, I don't know what I'd say. So let's just think about it. What would you say? What would you ask? But it doesn't have to be an exact clad iron, like say these exact words, because I think it just breeds too much anxiety. I've got a script and it sounds robotic. And oh, well, they've said something and now I don't know what to. No, I don't know. There's nothing telling me what to say. You're sat on the biggest, fastest word processor ever, which is your brain. Like
exactly.
something will float up. Ask whatever it is that floats up, whatever question. I would always ask it because it's floated up for a reason. They've said something. You have a question. Ask it. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's been many times when I've been on the receiving end of a cold call and I've given them a response and it's not quite on their list of responses, so then they just stumble and stutter,
Mm,
and it just sounds really
yeah.
unprofessional. So if you've got key points instead, and you can talk around the subject, and you can
Yeah.
go back with the question, can you just clarify that for me? What exactly do you mean? I mean, it's having an open and engaging conversation. Okay, we're trying to
Yeah.
extract information from somebody in the nicest possible way. So if you've just got a script which is very robotic, you're going to lose interest, or the person at the other end of the phone is going to lose interest pretty quickly. So you've got to be engaging. You've got to inject your personality into the conversation. I always
Yeah.
ask a lot of questions to set the tone. You know, now there are
What are
people that
your
say,
what would
"Go ahead."
give us some examples of them,
So
Stephen?
it's simple things like just asking about your day, the weekend. If it's a Monday, I'll come. Do you have a nice weekend? What's the weather like where you are? I mean, these questions might sound pretty inane, but when you talk to people, it's about humanizing the conversation instead of just getting down to business right away. We talk about things like you and I
Yeah.
spoke about before we engaged in this podcast.
Yeah.
You know,
We were
we
two
we, we
key
had
things that we were
yeah, we talked
yeah.
about things that have been happening recently, and it's just humanizing the conversation, which is what it's about because you're trying to build a relationship. So I
Yeah, we're
wouldn't
not
be
trying to
too
sell at people.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
And I find that people try and data dump maybe an entire product catalog or 40 years worth of experience or like their entire sales pitch onto someone, and it might not even be the person that they need to speak to. Or they'll be like, well, what it is this, and then they'll go into this like Oscar winning speech,
yeah,
and
and it's
the
completely
person on
wasted.
the other end is like, don't know what to do with that. So, what's the best way to use a cold call if it's a company that you want to engage with and you don't know anything about them? And well, you've done a bit of research, but you don't know if they're interested. We've got an idea of who the person might be, and we're going to ring to try and see if they're interested in our products or services. How would you go about that?
Okay, very simply, practice active listening. Okay, so
Oh,
pay
lovely.
attention.
I hope you're going to talk about active listening.
Pay
Fantastic.
attention to the prospect's responses, okay, questions and concerns, and adjust your approach accordingly. So if you ask a question but you're not really listening because you're concentrating on what you're going to say and talking about data dumping, you're going to lose them. Okay, so
Mm,
you've got to listen to what they're saying, which will then help you to tailor the next question. So you might have the next best thing available on your product and your product list, but if they're not the right person to talk to, you're going to tell them all the information, the specs, what it can do, what it costs,
yeah.
the value. It's going to be completely wasted. So you've got to listen to what they're saying. So you've got two ears and one mouth. You should always use them in that order.
In those ratios.
Yeah.
And this is a really good point because sometimes when I ask people when I'm training this, well, what is your reason for calling them? And they often can't answer that. Well, I want to see if they're interested in buying this. So I'm like, oh, so you're in selling mode. This is the first call you've made to this company. So what is the reason for calling? Is it to sell? And they're like, no, it's maybe to sort of find out if so and so is the right person. I'm like, great, do that as step one. And then once you've found that, what's the next step? Well, maybe finding out how to reach them. What's the best way to communicate that with them? Is it something that the company's looking at? Is it on their radar for 2024? It's just really basic stuff like, is this something you're looking at? And are you the person that's looking at it? Let's just get the basic stuff first. And then once you know it's something like in the crosshairs of this year, or this month or this quarter, you got the person that you think is the best starting point, the person who's responsible, then you can start having a look at getting a specific time set up to have a conversation. But I think what we do is we put too much pressure on ourselves to sell everything and say everything in the first like phone call because we often think we're not going to get another shot. So I'd better tell them everything, but by doing that, we're not going to get another shot because they don't know what the heck's going on. So they're just going to be like, oh, yeah, no, that's not for us, thanks.
Exactly. 2% of business comes from that first phone call. Okay, 2%. 98% of business comes from touch points 5 through 12.
Yeah,
So it's a series
yeah,
of texts, emails, DMs, posts, anything that you
yeah,
can do to get in, touch with that person. So it might be a call, email, and you might just be making them aware of a new product or service or innovation that's out there in the marketplace that they may not be aware of. You may also
Yeah.
say, well, we're using this service or product with one of your peers, and we just thought you might be interested. Is this on your radar? How are you currently doing things? So it's not about selling; it's about setting an expectation. I don't want to sell to you right now. I'm just gathering information. I want to have a conversation with you
Yeah.
to see if this is even on your radar. Don't even mention the word
Yeah.
sell.
Yeah,
Yeah,
perfect. That's it. And then it just takes the pressure off, and it's a nicer experience for the recipient as well. And you'd be amazed how many times you ring people and they're like, yeah, actually, it's something that we've just come out of a management meeting and said that we need to sort out, or it was on the director's agenda and he's passed it down. So we're not maybe right now, but like it's in the crosshairs. Can you ring back, or can you do this, or can, and they sometimes give you a next step. Now, I'd say a lot of people, I don't have a percentage here, I probably should, but a lot of people will just be like, yeah, yeah, I'll ring back. Yeah, or they've given me the brush off. They're not that interested. If somebody tells you to ring them back in whatever time frame, you ring them back because they are expecting you to just disappear like most people do. You know, if you get a phone call from, don't come at me, but like a utilities company or someone like that, oh yeah, can you ring me back? You know, I'm still waiting for Sky to ring me back. You know, that they were talking about offers. And I'm like, I can't look at it right now, but can you ring me back? Yeah, someone will ring me back. Someone will ring you back. I knew I wasn't getting a call back. I just knew. But you know, if someone says, can you call me back? Because yes, I think this is going to be of interest at this point. Fix a time, fix a date. It doesn't matter if it's 6 months in the future. Great, that'll take us to June.
abs-
First week of June, last week of June. What day is best for you? Okay, morning or afternoon. Who else needs to be involved? Great, I'll send you an invite. Because, you know, if we're going to fix a time or we're going to call back, we need to at least get some form of like firmness to it. Otherwise, it's just a passive, like, yeah, yeah, just whatever. So, like, you can really start to get some firm next steps in, but
Absolutely.
ring them back.
Two, so two,
Yeah,
two points I want to highlight. Number one, the fortune is absolutely in the follow up. Okay, so
yes,
which is
yeah,
where a lot of sales fall down. Is people do not follow up. They
yeah,
get the brush off. They say, "Call me back." A lot of salespeople don't call back, and that's bad because it's not quite a brush off. They might not be ready for you just now, but they're saying, "Call me back." You'll know pretty quickly when you call back whether it's a brush off or they're actually wanting to talk to you. But like you said,
or if you
when you
say great when,
yes,
you
and
know
that's
they'll,
about my next
yeah,
point. Um, give them options. Don't say, when can I call you back? If you say, can I call you back on the 3rd of January or the 7th of June at 3 o'clock, give them times, give them options, because you give them two or three, they will pick one. Nine times out
yeah,
of 10, they will pick one. But if you're
yeah,
um, wishy-washy with dates and times, they'll give you the brush off. Always have
yeah.
dates and times. Give them options.
Because if you're vague, or you've got doubt, or you've got anxiety, or you don't really know how you're adding value, or you're really vague, that's what you're going to get. Your
Yeah.
customer, whoever's on the other end of the phone, is going to experience what you're experiencing through the conversation. So if you're saying anything like, "Well, I can really add value to your business," tell them how. Because on the think about it, go a step further. If you're the recipient of that, oh great, we're going to have a meeting to talk about how much value they can add. How are you going to do that then? How much value can you add? What value? What would you do? So, like, just answer that for them. And it might be because we fixed this particular thing and we know that's happening in your industry right now. Or I can give you like a little bit of relief over here because I know this is what you guys are kind of struggling with. So, we want to talk about the specifics of that and how that can help you. And I'm thinking something like this and just give a little bit of specifics because then it shows that that is more bespoke and that's not a throwaway. How many times have we all heard the phrase like, "Oh, add value, save you time"? How? You know, it's just try and give a little bit of specificness to the situation, so it doesn't feel like it's the 100th call that you've made and said that. They will feel that if that is what you've done.
Yeah, you should give examples. If you've known where you've added value to a similar industry or a competitor or a peer, have that information to hand. We've helped X and Y do this and it saved them that. If you've got something similar, um, it might help them to think, oh well, okay, well if they're doing it and it's done that, then maybe it's worth having a conversation. At the end of the day, you just want to have a conversation. You want to gather intelligence to find out whether it's actually something they'll need or want.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That is it. That's basically, and going back to the reason for calling, the reason why I'm ringing you is to find out who is the best person or who is the person responsible for so and so. The reason why I'm calling is for this reason. The aim for you shouldn't be at that point to sell at someone. The aim might be to find out who is the person who's responsible, to find out what is on the company agenda, to find out how you take that next step. So it's always like a little piece of the puzzle, and then usually through again the different touch points, it might be that you connect with them on LinkedIn. You find out who the right person is. You get them on LinkedIn. You connect with them. They're active on LinkedIn. They see you. They see your posts. I just called your company. Um, Tell me, where's sustainability on your radar? Tell me, how are the sales doing? If you're flying with sales, great, you don't need me. How's customer satisfaction, or how are the sales team doing? So there's always something else that you can be talking about, finding out what's working really well. If they are, nailing the area of expertise that you're ringing about, what's happening for them? How are they doing that? So that's still intel. That's great. If it's a no, great, that's fine. That's all right. We can find out a little bit more about why, and then we can always find out, well, what about the future. Is this likely to show up, or can I contact you again in the future? There's always something from it. It's never a wasted phone call. You're always going to get some intel from it for sure.
Absolutely. And do you know who can be the greatest resource for you when you're calling up a company? The
The
gatekeeper.
gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always, always,
You thought
always
that.
be nice to the gatekeeper because they can be your
Yeah.
greatest asset. I'm
They know
always nice to.
everything.
They do, they do, and they know who the person is to talk to. They can put you in the right direction. They can give you email addresses, um, and yeah, you've got to treat the gatekeeper with the most utmost respect, and they will give you everything
Absolutely.
9 times out of 10.
So let's summarize then. I know this is a biggie, but what are your top tips for cold calling them? Hit me with them.
Top tips for cold calling. Wow. Okay, so if I had to embrace rejection. Okay,
Embrace
embrace
rejection.
it. Do not take it personally. Okay, um, it's all a learning curve because every no is one step closer to a yes. Okay, every no is one step closer to a yes. Um, have a script to begin with, but learn it, and then précis it down to points, key points, because you don't want to sound
Yeah.
like a robot. Um, be engaging. Smile when you dial. It's so important. You can absolutely tell tone of voice by a smile.
You can actually probably tell the energy of someone, even from a phone call, just by how they're going to show up, like how they show up on that, whether they sigh. You can even, I've done it before, I've listened to call openings: too busy, too abrupt, too quiet, can't be asked, stressed. You
Yeah,
can just like name them, like the emotions or the thoughts that someone's having by how they've answered the phone. And so it goes the same when you're dialing. Nobody wants to speak to you if you're really stressed out, busy, can't be asked. It's not really going to be conducive of getting good results. So yeah, it goes the other way as well.
yeah, absolutely. Um, practice active listening. So important. When people are talking to you, repeat back some of what they've just said so they know you're listening. Ask questions, write stuff down, take notes, and then ask clarifying questions just so they can know that you're listening to demonstrate that you're interested in what they're saying and you understand what they say. It's so
I've
important.
actually just been doing that now. If anyone's seen me like looking down and playing with like my phone and my
Yeah,
notebook, it's because I'm writing stuff down and I had questions that I wanted to ask Stephen, and so I'm listening to him and then I'm writing down. And also, I think another thing for active listening is thinking about the motivation. So sometimes it's like when you get an objection, it's not so much what they've said, they're just the surface level words, but there's a thought they've got that's made them say those words. And our job is to find out what that thought is. So I always sort of train my coach my clients into like try and think of, I wonder what's making them say that.
Yeah.
And once you get to that, a question will pop up. It might even be that question like, oh, what makes you say that? You're not interested in having a look at progressing your sales or doubling your sales. Like, why? Because they might be pretty healthy, or they might think training's nonsense, or they might, like, but they're going to give you something. They're going to
Yeah.
give you the thought that makes them say they're not interested. And so that's a really good thing for active listening. I wonder what makes them say what they're saying. Surface level thought, the active listening is like, I wonder what's motivating them to say it. And that's when you can next level shift your sales and your phone calls. 100%.
Absolutely. Be confident. Confidence is essential in
Yes.
making cold calls. You've got to believe in the value of what you're offering, um, and convey that conviction through your tone of voice and your demeanor. You know, so be calm, be cool, be collect, and talk to people. And if you can talk in this late night DJ voice, you can get them to buy
Have
absolutely anything
the
from you.
DJ voice. So I think that's a wonderful list. Thank you so much, Stephen. We've got like some top tips there from Stephen. The idea of how you can start some of these phone calls, the sort of the mindset to support that, and I love the fact about embracing the rejection and failure, because I think the the guest that I had on, it was Rich Williams, and he had a similar experience to you where he went to America to sell, to do a selling program, and
Right.
they actually said to him, "You're going to fail. Like, tell me how you're going to handle failure because you're going to want to quit. Like, we're going to walk you through." They knew the points that people ducked out, so they were like, "You're going to want to quit here. You're going to want to quit here. You're going to want to quit here. How are you going to handle that? How are you going to get past it?" So it wasn't a case of like, "Oh, I want to avoid it and just only have the yeses and the good stuff." Oh, you're going
Yeah.
to get like all the shit as well. And when it comes rolling down at you, what are you going to do? And I think this is what we don't prepare ourselves with anything like sales. It doesn't matter if it's cold calling or anything. We almost don't want to hear the no's. We just want the fluffy, nice stuff. And
Yeah.
you're like, no, how are you going to prepare to hear like this type of objection? And then let's be pragmatic. Yeah, we didn't know what to say then. So what are you going to do differently so that you can move past it next time? And that's how you progress. That's how you get better and better.
Absolutely.
So
Very good.
thank you so much, Stephen.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Making Sales Simple, a podcast by Helen Tebay, the sales lady. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and follow me on Spotify for more.